They've puzzled the world for centuries, but scientists have finally solved the mystery of the place of origin of many of the megaliths that make up Stonehenge.
Imagine standing on sacred ground, certain you understand its secrets, until a single scan shatters everything you thought you knew. 3 centuries of study, millions of footsteps across ancient stones, and buried just beneath your feet lies a secret no one anticipated. How could a civilization, without metal tools or modern technology, move massive stones with such precision? This is Stonehenge like you've never seen it.
For centuries, experts have wondered why England's Stonehenge was built. The reasons behind the prehistoric stone circle are still a mystery.
Not a circle of rocks, not a tourist attraction, but a machine of sound, astronomy and engineering, crafted by hands that understood the impossible. What you're about to witness will challenge everything you've been taught about history and force you to ask, what else have we been blind to for thousands of years? The buried complex. The discovery came out of something called the Stonehenge Hidden Landscapes Project, a multi-year initiative that dragged ground-penetrating radar equipment across the entire region surrounding the monument. And the idea was straightforward: send electromagnetic pulses into the earth, and when those pulses hit something, a change in soil density, a buried object, an underground structure, they bounce back and create a detailed image of what is hidden below. No digging required, no damage to the protected site, just data coming back from depths that had kept their secrets sealed for 5,000 years. The team expected routine stuff: old post holes, forgotten burial pits, the kind of standard findings that confirm what everyone already assumes and end up in a journal nobody reads. But on what should have been a routine final survey, the data came back wrong. Not wrong as in broken equipment, wrong as in impossible. Professor Vincent Gaffney was the first to see it render on his monitor. 20 enormous shafts, each over 30 feet wide and 15 feet deep, carved directly into solid bedrock. And here is the part that made his team stop breathing. They were not scattered randomly. When the positions were plotted on a coordinate grid, they formed a perfect circle. A mathematically precise ring spanning more than a mile, centered exactly on Durrington Walls, a site 2 miles from Stonehenge.
We're standing at Durrington Walls, which is a huge henge monument. A henge is a type of earthwork enclosure built in the late Neolithic period.
Let me put that in perspective for you. We are talking about positioning accuracy measured in inches across a structure that covers thousands of feet, built by people who had no metal, no written language, no wheels. Modern surveyors would struggle to replicate this without GPS, and these people did it with antler picks and bone tools. Dr. Richard Bates from the University of St. Andrews ran the calculations over and over, hoping he had made an error somewhere that would make this less extraordinary. He had not. When he finally spoke to the team, his voice dropped to barely a whisper. "This is unprecedented," he said. "Hunter-gatherers did not do this. Early farming communities did not do this. Someone with knowledge we do not understand did this." But the shafts were just the beginning. When the survey expanded across the wider landscape, at least 17 previously unknown structures emerged from the data. Massive timber posts that once stood in concentric circles, some as large as the standing stones themselves. Ancient pits arranged in deliberate geometric patterns that mirrored celestial configurations, had processional pathways carved into the earth designed to funnel movement toward the central monument like a vast ceremonial highway. The stones we have been staring at for centuries, the ones on every postcard and every documentary thumbnail, they were never the monument. They were just the center of something much, much bigger. A designed landscape stretching for miles in every direction, most of it deliberately buried underground, and most of it invisible to anyone without the technology to see beneath the surface. And that raises a question that should genuinely unsettle you. If they buried all of this on purpose, who was it hidden from? The sound machine. Now here is where the story takes a turn nobody expected. For decades, visitors to Stonehenge have reported something strange when they stand inside the circle. A low vibration in their chest, an unusual energy they cannot explain, a feeling that something is fundamentally different inside those stones compared to anywhere else in the landscape. Most researchers dismissed it. Imagination. Wishful thinking. Tourists wanting to feel something mystical at a place they had seen in documentaries their whole lives. Fair enough, but once the radar revealed the scale of hidden engineering beneath the surface, and a new question forced itself to the front of the line. If the builders designed all of that underground complexity with mathematical precision, what else had they engineered that previous studies completely missed? The answer came from Trevor Cox, an acoustical engineer at the University of Salford. In 2020, his team built a precise 1:12 scale model of Stonehenge using 3D printed stones, positioned with millimeter accuracy to match the original layout. They placed it inside a specially designed acoustic chamber that eliminated all external noise, creating a perfect laboratory for measuring how sound behaved inside the stone circle.
Talking to the media, the project leader, Professor Trevor Cox, said, "It is the sound equivalent of visualization. We can virtually place a source of sound in a space."
What happened next made Cox stop the experiment entirely. He recalibrated every piece of equipment, checked every sensor, verified every setting, then ran the tests again. Same results. Inside the stone circle, voices became fuller, richer, more powerful. So they carried a weight and authority that sounded almost divine. Musical instruments resonated with an amplified depth that wrapped around listeners from every direction. The reverberation time measured just over half a second, enough to transform ordinary speech into something commanding and immersive. But the moment you stepped outside the ring, the effect vanished completely. Gone, like crossing an invisible threshold between two entirely different worlds. Now think about that in context. Neolithic homes were quiet structures that absorbed sound. Open landscapes dispersed it quickly. Dense forests swallowed it entirely. These people had never experienced contained acoustics in their lives. And then they walk into Stonehenge, and suddenly a human voice sounds like the voice of a god. Here is what really got the researchers. Despite the massive stone surfaces surrounding the interior, they detected almost no echo. The arrangement of inner stones disrupted reflections from the outer ring so precisely that sharp echoes were eliminated entirely. That does not happen by accident. That requires understanding wave behavior at a level we did not think these people possessed. But Rupert Till, an archaeoacoustics researcher, pushed even further. He discovered that certain Welsh bluestones produce clear ringing tones when struck, almost like massive stone bells. The region they were quarried from is traditionally called Man Clocog, which translates to ringing stones. Local folklore had preserved this knowledge for thousands of years. Nobody in the academic world paid attention until now. And here is the detail that changes everything. Till's acoustic modeling revealed that the specific arrangement of stones generates infrasound.
Researchers recently discovered something musical about Stonehenge, and they're bringing it to you in an app.
Deep vibrations that fall below the threshold of human hearing. You cannot hear infrasound, but you absolutely feel it. All scientific research has linked exposure to infrasound with powerful sensations of awe, unease, disorientation, and a deep primal fear that you cannot trace to any visible source. You just feel it in your bones, and you do not know why. So ask yourself this: was that an accident? Did people who carved 20 shafts in a mathematically perfect circle, who eliminated echo while amplifying reverberation, who selected stones from hundreds of miles away specifically for their acoustic properties, did those people accidentally stumble into infrasound? Or did they know exactly what they were building? Because if they knew, then Stonehenge was never just a temple. It was a machine. A machine designed to make people feel things they could not explain, to make ordinary voices sound supernatural, to manufacture awe on demand. And the people who controlled that machine would have held a kind of power that has no equivalent in the modern world. Not political power, not military power. Something deeper. The power to reach directly into the human nervous system and turn the dials. The impossible journey, the acoustic discoveries, forced researchers to completely rethink every assumption they had made about Stonehenge. If these builders understood sound at this level, what else had been catastrophically underestimated about their abilities? The answer dropped in late 2024 and hit the archaeological community like a shockwave. A research team led by Anthony Clark at Curtin University had been analysing the altar stone, the large ceremonial slab positioned at the very heart of Stonehenge. Using high-precision mass spectrometry, they examined tiny mineral grains trapped inside stone fragments, dating individual crystals and measuring isotope ratios with extraordinary accuracy. When the results came back, Clark immediately requested a second analysis, then a third. Then he brought in an independent laboratory for verification. The numbers came back identical every single time, some minerals dated between 1 and 2 billion years old. Others clustered around 450 million years. And this highly unusual combination created a chemical fingerprint so distinctive that it matched only one geological formation on the entire planet: the Old Red Sandstone of northeastern Scotland in the Orcadian Basin, over 700 miles from Stonehenge. Dr. Robert Ixer of University College London had spent decades studying Stonehenge geology. He had written the definitive papers on bluestone origins. He thought he understood exactly where every major stone came from. When he saw Clark's data, he went completely still. "This changes everything we thought we understood about these people," he said, and you could hear in his voice that he meant it. Here is why 700 miles matters. Moving a 6-ton sandstone block overland across Neolithic Britain would have been virtually impossible. The terrain was dense primeval forest, treacherous marshland, rivers without bridges. There were no roads, there were no pack animals strong enough. The logistics simply do not work by land, which means these Neolithic engineers loaded a 6-ton stone onto a specially constructed vessel and guided it along hundreds of kilometers of dangerous rocky coastline. They did this using sophisticated knowledge of tides, currents, weather patterns, and celestial navigation. 5,000 years ago, no metal tools, no written language, no compass, nothing we would consider the basic infrastructure of a capable civilization. And this was not a one-time miracle. The pattern repeated across the entire monument. Bluestones transported from the Preseli Hills in Wales, 150 miles away. Massive sarsen stones dragged from the Marlborough Downs, and now the altar stone, shipped from Scotland. Each material selected not randomly, not for convenience, but for specific acoustic, magnetic, or geological properties. Each transported across distances that required planning, coordination, and institutional knowledge spanning multiple generations. Researcher Richard Bevins, who spent years tracing the chemical fingerprints of every stone at Stonehenge, put it in terms that are impossible to dismiss.
Until now, it had been thought that Stonehenge was built as an astronomical calendar or observatory, but after a decade of research, there is reason to believe the world's most famous prehistoric monument may have begun life as a giant burial ground.
We are looking at a society with complex long-distance trade networks, advanced maritime capabilities, and organizational sophistication that rivals anything we see in the ancient Mediterranean. And they achieved this 1,000 years before the Egyptian pyramids reached their peak. Or 1,000 years, just let that sit with you for a moment. When the first pharaohs were still figuring out how to stack mud bricks, the people who built Stonehenge were already navigating open coastline with multi-ton cargo, coordinating supply chains across an entire island, and selecting construction materials based on acoustic and geological properties that most of us would need a university degree to understand. We have had this story backwards the entire time. And we looked at the absence of written records and assumed the absence of intelligence. We confused silence with simplicity, and we were profoundly, embarrassingly wrong. The celestial code. Everyone knows Stonehenge lines up with the summer solstice. That is the fact that gets repeated in every tour guide speech and every introductory paragraph of every article ever written about the place. Every June, thousands of people gather to watch the sunrise pierce through the central axis, and they celebrate what they believe is the monument's big astronomical trick. But here is what almost nobody talks about. That solstice alignment might be the least impressive thing about Stonehenge's relationship with the sky. It might even have been designed to be obvious. A surface-level feature meant to satisfy casual observers while hiding the far more complex code built into the deeper architecture. When researchers combined the ground-penetrating radar data with advanced astronomical modeling software, additional alignments emerged from the noise. The buried pathways, the timber post positions, the massive shaft ring at Durrington Walls, All of them demonstrated precise celestial orientations that go far beyond watching where the sun rises once a year. Some features pointed toward major lunar standstills, rare astronomical events that occur on an 18.6-year cycle, i.e. when the moon reaches its most extreme positions along the horizon. Think about what tracking that requires. You need to observe the sky carefully, consistently, for nearly 2 full decades just to see one complete cycle. Then you need to record what you saw, teach it to the next generation, and keep the chain of knowledge unbroken long enough to verify your observations across multiple cycles. That is institutional education. That is long-term planning. That is a civilization with organizational depth we never credited the Neolithic world with possessing. The 2024 major lunar standstill brought researchers flooding back to Stonehenge to document how moonlight interacted with the standing stones during this rare event. What they recorded confirmed that the monument tracks lunar extremes with the same precision it tracks solar ones. And then there were the stone positions that pointed toward patches of the night sky with no obvious modern significance. Empty darkness, meaningless, until researchers reconstructed star maps from 5,000 years ago, accounting for the slow wobble of Earth's axis that gradually shifts stellar positions across millennia. Suddenly, those apparently random alignments clicked into place. The builders had encoded a precise map of the heavens as they appeared 5,000 years ago. A celestial snapshot frozen in stone. Dr. Amanda Chadburn, a specialist in Stonehenge astronomical alignments, described the realization with visible emotion. "We kept assuming they were primitive," she said. "We kept assuming they were making rough guesses based on casual observation. They were not guessing at all. They were tracking celestial mechanics with mathematical precision we did not believe was possible without written records and metal instruments." Stonehenge was never a simple calendar for planting crops. It was a sophisticated astronomical instrument encoding observations that required generations of systematic documentation to compile. Every stone position was a data point. Every alignment was a calculation. Every sightline was a thesis statement written in rock and geometry, addressed to anyone with the patience and the tools to read it. And the question that follows from that is one the research community has been carefully avoiding. Who was keeping those records? Who held that knowledge? And what did they use it for? The shadow rulers. This is the part of the story that makes people uncomfortable. Not because it is speculative, but because the evidence is so clear and the implications are so dark. For centuries, the story of Stonehenge has been told as a warm, in almost pastoral vision of prehistoric Britain. Scattered tribes from across the island coming together to build a shared sacred monument, a symbol of unity, cooperation, and common spiritual purpose. It's a beautiful story, but ground-penetrating radar, field surveys, and modern archaeological methods have destroyed it completely. The scale of the construction is staggering. Stonehenge is not a simple circle of rocks. Recent surveys have revealed a vast network of buried features, ceremonial pits, concentric ditches, and massive shafts, all extending far beyond the familiar stone circle. To build even the visible stones, thousands of workers would have been required, not for months, but across multiple generations. This was not a fleeting festival project. It was centuries of sustained, organized labor, executed with precision that modern engineers would find difficult to replicate. And yet, archaeologists have found no evidence of permanent settlements anywhere near the site. The people who moved the stones, some weighing up to 30 tons, lived somewhere else. They labored under conditions they likely did not fully understand, following plans laid down by an elite few. Who were these elites? Archaeological evidence points to a small class of individuals with access to specialized knowledge: astronomy, geology, mathematics, and crucially, acoustic science. Researchers from the University of Birmingham and the University of Wales have demonstrated that the bluestones, transported from Preseli Hills in Wales, more than 140 miles away, were not chosen randomly. They possess specific resonant properties. Stand near them, and they hum with subsonic vibrations you cannot consciously hear. Infrasound like this is known to trigger physiological reactions: nausea, anxiety, even awe. Imagine a small group of people controlling sound and light. in movement and ritual to create the illusion of supernatural power. Consider the altar stone, quarried from the mountain ranges of Scotland. This single stone, roughly 7 feet long, weighs over 6 tons. Moving it required meticulous planning, coordinated labor, and extensive knowledge of ancient engineering. It is unlikely that this was a symbolic gift of cooperation. More plausible is that it was tribute, extracted from subordinate communities to demonstrate power, command obedience, and reinforce the authority of a centralized ruling hierarchy. Stonehenge was not merely a religious monument, it was a tool of social control. The alignment of the stones amplifies this effect. Summer and winter solstices, lunar standstills, equinoxes, these celestial events were predictable with remarkable precision. Researchers at the University of Leicester have shown that Stonehenge's geometry allowed the elite to read the sky in ways inaccessible to ordinary people. Now combine that with acoustics. Voices inside the circle echo with unnatural clarity. Chants, speeches, and rituals are amplified in ways that modern architects struggle to reproduce without advanced materials. A farmer walking 50 miles to participate in a ritual would encounter not just massive stones, but vibrating ground, amplified voices, and synchronized celestial movements, a multi-sensory demonstration of power that could feel divine. Historical parallels exist. In other ancient societies, rulers have deliberately manipulated perception to create authority. Pharaohs in Egypt used monumental architecture to inspire awe. Inca temples amplified natural phenomena to assert control. And medieval cathedral builders exploited acoustics to make the spoken word feel sacred. Stonehenge fits this pattern, but on a scale that predates known examples by millennia. Were the builders deliberately constructing a weapon of psychological control? A system designed to manufacture obedience across generations? Archaeologists cannot prove intent with absolute certainty, but the capability is clear, and it was systematically engineered. Every stone, every gap, every alignment was part of a plan to awe, to control, and to signal power. This is not speculation. It is not conspiracy theory. It is measurable physics, vibration frequencies, sound amplification, line-of-sight sightlines, anti-celestial cycles, all integrated into one monumental landscape. The implications are chilling. This was a society capable of coordinating labor on an unprecedented scale, of transmitting elite knowledge across generations, and of using the natural world, sound, stone, and sky, as a tool of social dominance. Stonehenge was a statement, not just of technical skill, but of control, of power, of a civilization that understood the human mind as well as the heavens. So when we walk among the stones today, it is tempting to romanticize the past, but the truth is darker and more compelling. Stonehenge was not a community project. It was a demonstration of authority, a message carved in stone, sound, and starlight, designed to manipulate, to awe, and to endure far beyond the lifetimes of its builders. And the more we uncover, the more we realize that the story we were told for centuries was not just incomplete, it was fundamentally wrong. And the stones have kept their secrets for 5,000 years. And even now, we are only beginning to decode their language. Every scan, every measurement, every careful calculation hints at knowledge that was meant to survive us. Knowledge we may not yet be ready to fully comprehend. What other truths are buried just out of sight, waiting for the right eyes, the right technology, the right moment to awaken? And if Stonehenge was designed to speak across millennia, what will it reveal next? And will we be able to understand it when it does?